we're going to dive right in, and we're going to give Paul a chance to teach us more and more and more. So let me just start by saying this, Paul.
Yo.
First off, I want to say thank you for coming out and, giving us time to really kind of hear your story and how God led you to these unintended destinations.
Thanks.
I really love just that terminology.
Thanks.
And I know that this is a time where mental health is kind of a hot button thing, right? It's easily misunderstood. It's one of those things that I think I probably have preconceived notions that are totally off base.
You want to discuss those?
Doubt I'm the only one, so I'd love that.
Okay.
I'm not the one asking the questions, they are.
Oh, good call.
Our beautiful crowd.
Yeah.
But I did want to say this one thing real quick. I want to give you a minute to respond to this.
Yeah.
We've talked a few times about this mental health handbook that you have been a major contributor to.
Sure.
And I know actually the very reason, it says it right here on the back, the very reason this came to fruition was actually because Needle's Eyes community and the community of a local church here in town experienced one of our members passing away by suicide.
Correct.
And it was that particular moment, it was Jimmy Massey, it was that particular moment when everyone thought, what just happened? Of everybody, you would have never expect this.
Yeah, how could this happen to him?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so before I dive into the questions, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for contributing.
Sure.
But is there anything, even some kind of common misconceptions about suicide, the holidays, anything that you can say, hey, look, you know what, we all kind of have a different view on it or the wrong view on it?
Yeah. The evidence is very clear that suicide is not predictable. And I can give you things that cite it. I'm not going to do that because you're not a bunch of therapists, thank goodness. It's not predictable. If we could predict it, we would probably do a better job of stopping it. There's a preconceived notion, and it's repeated every year, that suicide rates go up over the holidays. And that is not true. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a problem. So let me just kind of give you an example. Again, that's repeated a lot. In 2021, which is the last year where we have complete data, the month that had the highest suicide was August.
Huh.
For most years rather, before that, it was April or May. We don't know why. I would be remiss or, really kind of, it would be really difficult for me to try to figure out why that is, because nobody has been able to figure it out. But there are some things we do know. We do know that most suicide is planned. We know that on average, for one person who dies by suicide, there have been somewhere between 25 and 30 attempts overall.
Wow.
That many people who attempt suicide and who do not succeed in killing themselves. Can we close that door?
Yes.
Thanks. Sorry. But most people who don't succeed can try again. In fact, when I'm doing an assessment, when I've spent 10 years working in area emergency rooms doing assessments, suicide assessments of people who often had committed suicide or were intending to. Thanks, man. They sound like they were having a really good time in there, and I was jealous. No, I'm just playing. But
didn't match the vibe of the conversation.
It really didn't. We're going to really bum them out right now. Anyway, so one of the things that we would see is multiple attempts. And so what we know about suicide is that it's rarely spontaneous. There's been some thought into it. The two things that are the highest risk factors for suicide, well, two of the major risk factors, I say, number one is a sense of hopelessness, a sense that things will not get better. The other thing is a sense of complete detachment. So for men in America, men aged roughly 45 to 64 have the highest suicide rate in America, white men. What we've seen over the last few years is a significant increase among black and African Americans in suicide, particularly young black men and black women. But it used to be, it was almost unheard of to see that among black women. We're beginning to see more equalization. It used to be, I think as little as 5 years ago, about 85% of all people who died by suicide were white. and 75% of them were men. We're seeing more differentiation. Native Americans or First Nations have the highest ratio of completed suicide compared to, per 100,000. It's about 27 per 100,000. But the biggest thing we want to look at is a sense of hopelessness, that things cannot get better, and a sense of detachment, or that one is a burden on other people. All those factors kind of come together. But when we add to that, that's before we add things like mental illness, particularly a mood disorder like major depressive disorder, and addiction. Addiction is the number one mental health issue in America. Everything else, even you group it together, does not touch. And I'm touching this. I'm sorry, it's really good beer, Hardywood. Thanks. But if you have a substance use problem, this is a problem. So all this to say is that there's all these factors that kind of come together.
Yeah, and it's one of those topics I think the average one of us has no idea how to address it. If somebody comes to us, my wife actually she works at a school. Okay. Just talk about high stress. Schools right now are crazy high stress. And she's got one particular coworker, and this actually has to do with a question.
Cool.
But she's got a coworker who regularly kind of jokes, this is it. This is the time that's just going to push me over the edge, and I think I'm just going to have to end it. And those sorts of comments regularly happen, and she'll come home and say, I don't know when I should take this person seriously. And one of our questions, and I'll ask it because seeing my wife deal with this day to day, you don't want to laugh it off. No. You also don't want to overreact if that's possible. And so the question is, what cues or flags can we look or listen for in the workplace that would actually differentiate a person who's just griping from someone who is truly experiencing a more serious mental condition?
Well, I think the thing is that I'm not one of these folks that's like, oh my gosh, everything's a trigger. When I taught at VCU and I taught social work students, I would say the first day of class, if you're easily triggered, you're in the wrong field. And sometimes people didn't like that, but that's just the truth. But the fact is that type of statement is concerning because there are some things we just don't joke about. And I think that there's a way to have a conversation about it, to be able to say, I've heard you say it a few times. I can't help but be concerned. Can you tell me more about that? You can do that. Again, what's the worst that could happen? The person, says, well, I don't feel like talking to you anymore. Okay. Or it actually begins a conversation because maybe what they also need to be aware of is that I've lost friends to suicide.
Yeah.
I don't joke about it. My close friends know that we don't joke about that. My kids know we don't joke about that. And I've lost patients to suicide recently. And that's the hardest thing that we go through as professionals, but I think it's one of the hardest things we go through as individuals as well. So I think to be able to say, hey, when I hear you say something like that, that worries me, Jeremy. That when I hear you say that worries me. Can you are you okay?
Yeah.
And maybe that's where the person either realizes what they're doing is maybe not the most appropriate thing, but maybe they also say, no, I'm not, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And that's where I think a lot of us as Christians or people of faith that, we wonder about, if I'm going to step in and help, am I going to get over my head? I can tell you right now, you're not. You can care about another human being. If you're ultimately, then this is the short answer. This is the easiest answer. If you're ever worried about somebody, or not sure if they're going to hurt themselves, say, we need to go to the hospital. We need to go to the ER. Doesn't mean they're going to get admitted. Doesn't mean they need to be admitted. There are plenty of people that over thousands of people that I've assessed in area emergency rooms over 10 years. Majority of them I never admitted to a psychiatric hospital. They didn't need to be. But we had to come up with a plan. They needed something. We needed to come up with a plan. They needed some help. And a lot of times people are like, I just didn't know what to do. That's the safest place to go. That's the safest place to go. And that's kind of what we're talking about here is equipping our churches, our religious leaders, our business leaders to be able to say, okay, if I'm concerned, I'm going to do that. And sometimes people will say, well, what about the relationship? Well, you can't have a relationship with a person if they're dead unless it's Jesus, by the way. I mean, I can't be more blunt than that. You know, if I'm worried about the relationship, I'm worried about overreacting. I would rather overreact, not freak out, but overreact, and make sure that you're safe, even if it damages our relationship. We can repair that relationship. But if you're hurt or you've done something and you're gone, that relationship is over, and it leads a wake of hurt.
Yeah. I won't put this on you.
Oh, good.
But I'll share a perspective I've had.
Okay.
And this is reflected in kind of 3 or 4 different questions. So I'm going to consolidate them into one. It often feels like churches have a very overly simplistic response to mental health. Part of it can be, well, you know, if you spend a bit more time in prayer, or have you talked to your small group, or, you know, have you really kind of sought how to have maybe more faith in this particular area of your life? And some of that, there's definitely some validity to those things, going to your small group to share those burdens and seeking what the Lord is trying to do in certain areas of your life. Absolutely. However, it often seems like it ends there. Like, okay, mental health in church is often, well, you know, pray about it.
Right.
And that's sort of the extent. Now, that's partly why the Mental Health Handbook even came together.
Yeah.
But if that is how most of us have been trained to respond to our friends who are experiencing mental health crises, where are the shortcomings of coming at it purely from the view of, well, you know, Jesus loves you and you don't need to be hopeless in Christ?
I think that when you're experiencing hopelessness, those words can often ring hollow. It doesn't mean that we don't say that, but I think the danger with that, and I know how you teed this up, that was good. I think the danger with this is that we give people the notion that says, you know, if you just had everything right with Christ, your life would be okay. Mm-hmm. And that's wrong. Let me give you an example. My wife and I were members of a church for a number of years. This is going back to, we left this church in 2016. I'm not going to tell you which church it is because I don't mean to disrespect them. But I had a friend one Sunday morning, my running buddy of 30 years, jumped off a bridge. This is what I do for a living, folks. I help people. She never told me. I couldn't read her mind. And I remember sitting outside a church. My kids were in Sunday school. My wife was a ER nurse at the time, pediatric trauma nurse. So, yeah, we have a fun family. And so she's at VCU. She's working. And I remember calling my mom, who was a chaplain, and one of the wisest people I ever met, and I said, I can't go in there. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, there's nobody I can talk to in there. And that really hit me. And I remember telling my wife later on, I know that we've been talking about leaving this church because it has changed. The direction of the church changed. Theologically, it's different. I said, but honey, even though I've got 3 close male friends in there, and I think I could have talked to them, and I think they would have said, dude, I'm sorry. I know that these 3 guys would have said that. But I knew there were 100 people that would have said something like, was she a Christian? Mm. And my response would have been very emphatic and probably with a lot of foul language to say essentially, you know what? I don't care right now. All I know is that the God who died for me held her hand all the way down. Mm-hmm. That's what I needed. And, you know, and so that became kind of a litmus test for us to be able to say, we don't want to be a part of a community that just gives the notion out that just says, if you just love Jesus, everything's going to be okay. To me, that's very close to the prosperity gospel and Joel Osteen and all those cats. Give money to the church and you'll get rich. I'm not rich. I don't want to be rich. Well, I got kids going to college. I can take a little bit, but you get the idea. But the idea is that, you know, I think, again, we have to talk about it. And we have to realize also, you know, that, you know, roughly 1 in 10 Americans has a substance use disorder. And nobody asked for it. I said in my book, my last book, The Clinician's Guide, you know, I've probably interviewed somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 people, you know, and done therapy with some of them. That's a guesstimate. It may be less. I don't know. But I've never met somebody who said to me, you know, and I work a lot with people who use heroin and fentanyl, and I've never had somebody say to me, you know, this is really where I wanted to be in life. I've never had somebody say that. I've had people who were told they were destined to become homeless. They were destined to become human refuse. But they never believed that. They didn't want to believe that. My 11-and-a-half-year-old son wants to play basketball for Duke University. God love him. I have a better chance of growing a full head of hair without assistance. I'm not going to squash his dreams, but I'm saying, hey, son, it's always good to have backups. Your older brother's going to be a physical therapist, thank goodness. That kind of thing. But he's like, I want to play for Duke. Okay, great. You got to grow about 6 more feet. But the fact is that he could equally say to me, Dad, I want to be an alcoholic. He won't say that.
Yeah.
Even though I know he's got a 1 in 8 chance given his family's history of it, our family history of it. So I think we have to make it okay to talk about difficult things. And I think that it is more of a theological issue, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. So actually that tees up perfectly another one of the questions that came in.
Well, how about that?
We have to be willing to talk about hard things. And I think that is something that we say. We say that often.
Yeah.
What does it actually look like to have a safe conversation around the topic of mental health? Because there are so many taboos, there are so many misunderstandings, there are so many quick judgments that come to our minds about it. So what does it actually look like to create a safe space, to have that safe conversation around mental health?
Shut up and listen. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I think, and it's weird, when I train new therapists, one of the first things I have to work with them on is getting them to be quiet. And to say, you don't have to have the answers, because I don't.
Yeah.
And it's really been interesting with the emerging field of psychedelic medicine, which I absolutely adore. No, I don't have any with me, sorry. But the thing with that is that it really is about attending and listening to what the person is bringing. And we can get, with some people, I can get 7 hours of therapy done in 1 hour.
Wow.
But it's creating an environment to listen. And at times, it's creating an environment to challenge. But you can't challenge a person unless you have that relationship. So I'm going to talk about that tomorrow at the thing at the lunch, where I'm going to talk about how do you challenge people to change worldviews. You can't do that unless you have a relationship. So part of it is that how do we have that relationship?
Yeah.
Or anything else?
Yeah, that's good. That's really helpful.
But I think, again, listen more than anything else, because a lot of times people just need to know that. We spend so much time talking we spend so much time polarized. It's interesting. One of the things I tell my clients, whether they're utilizing psychedelic medicine to deal with severe depression, severe anxiety, or trauma, or addiction, or whether they're just doing conventional therapy, as I said, I need you to limit your looking at the news to 10 minutes or less a day. There is no reason to look at it for more than 10 minutes. And I've had people say, that's the best advice you ever gave me. And that's like after months of therapy, I'm like, oh, that's the best thing? Well, I guess it was. Thanks. But really it was, because part of it is you're worried about things that are completely out of your control. You need to maybe know what's going on in the world, but you need to worry about what's going on here. You need to worry about what's going on in your community. You need to worry about what's going on in your tribe. That's what you need to do. And you can expand that tribe. And one of the things that we've seen, one of the things that there's a direct correlation with mental health and mental illness in the community and wellness is the level of attachment. And what's been really amazing is being, a middle-aged guy. I get the chance to work with a lot of young people, and it's very normal for a generation, like I'm Generation X. It's very normal for my generation to really kind of diss Generation Z. I have a lot of hope, because what I see with a lot of young people, by young people I mean people late teens, 20s, maybe up to 30, I see a lot of them saying, hey, this is garbage. This isn't real. And I'm going, yeah, you need to teach people in my generation that think that Instagram and Snapchat, and I don't even know what the heck the rest of the stuff is. It's not real. Get off of it. You don't need that. It's not helping you. Stay away from things that make you scared. Stay away from things that make you anxious. Stay away from things that make you angry. Limit that. Your life will be better. And I've had people say, that was the best thing you ever told me. And I'm like, well, you paid a lot of money to hear that. Okay. Lucky you.
That I can immediately see the benefits of just not turning on the news.
Well, just 10 minutes a day. I mean, 10 minutes a day, because otherwise it's just, it's there to create a reaction more than anything else.
Yeah. One of the things in what you've shared already, I feel like, there's so many great questions that are coming in, and we could kind of find a way to get to all of them.
Cool. Let's do it.
We'll go through every single one. Guys, we're going to be here till 9:30. Keep sending more. But one of the themes that comes up, people have family that are struggling with mental health.
Yeah.
And the holidays, I think, whether or not it truly exacerbates it, I think that is a sense that we have.
Yeah.
Maybe it's our proximity. We're around our family. We're back in our childhood homes. We're, kind of reverting back to whatever sort of dynamic existed. Twofold question. I think we'll go with this part first. At what point is it sort of no longer your responsibility to help? Right. I mean, that's kind of a hard question to even put into words. But if you've tried and you've had the conversation, you've been that safe person, you've given them money, or you've helped them with, give them the account, whatever it is, and it just keeps happening. At what point do you establish that boundary and you say, okay, this is now beyond me?
When you exactly describe what you described. Again, there's no way I can change another person. I don't do the work. I walk with people who do the work. And so you can't change another person. You're ultimately not responsible for another person's happiness either. You're not. And so if we're looking at it from a position of like addiction, I can help you engage in treatment. I can help you get to treatment. The CEO of Caritas, which is an incredible organization, was here earlier today. Introduced her to Jeremy and Jordan. She's a friend of mine. She came by just to lend her support. She's going to do something, had to do something else, but that was just really nice of her to do that. But, a lot of it is just knowing, okay, there are things out there I can help you become a part of, but I'm not going to destroy myself or hurt myself to boost you up. And that's a hard thing, because a lot of what I do in therapy is helping people understand you're not responsible for other people's happiness. You don't need to be a jerk.
Right.
You don't need to be a tool, I have people that struggle with it all the time, that they are responsible for other people's happiness. They're responsible for other folks' well-being, and it's just simply, it's a balance. Yeah. And it's not going against what I said earlier. We want to set those boundaries. Setting boundaries is helpful, not just to you, but it's helpful to the other person more than anything else. That's why you don't want to call Jeremy at 2:30 in the morning. Yes. That's a boundary.
Please. If you hear nothing else tonight, please hear that. I think with family, that it's complicated with family. Undoubtedly. It feels like there's a different weight in the workplace. If it's my coworker, if it's my employee, even if it's my superior in the office, right, there's a different weight to that where I think it might be easier to let go. But at the same time, if that is something that is regularly happening, you're seeing it affect their work. Yeah. Or maybe you're the one and it's affecting your work. But at what point, as a faithful coworker, is it time for us to go, listen, this is beyond covering for a friend. Right. This is beyond trying to, pick up the slack of a coworker who's no longer able to perform, and I need to now go somewhere to get them some real help. Yeah, so I was managing a mental health program at a moderate-sized clinic here in town about 5 years ago, and became concerned about one of my teammates. I was a supervisor, about 19 people. And some people had started saying something's wrong here, and I remember going to him and just kind of, and this was purely God. It wasn't me, but just saying. I said, "Dude, I'm worried about you." And the first time he completely blew it off, and I went back and I said, "I'm really worried about you." And he was really hurting, and he actually needed to take some time off. So we went to HR. Because I wasn't trying to. I didn't want to. His work was suffering, and it was affecting my teammates, his teammates, and it was affecting our clients. I wanted to get him some help, but I started from that. I'm worried about you. I'm concerned about you, and that led to a process of healing. He ultimately did wind up leaving the agency, not the field. He needed to take more time for himself.
And I think that's the other thing, is that helping people realize that that sometimes we have to take a step back. Well, probably the bravest person I say brave, and that word's overused, but I think probably the bravest person I know in my life is my wife. Not just because I saw her deliver three kids without drugs, God knows why, and she's never lost an argument since then. And the first two are 9 pounds 2 ounces, and she's tiny. Yeah,
She didn't lose an argument before.
She has not lost. No, she hasn't. I just pretended I did. Yeah, and remember years ago, she was a pediatric trauma nurse at VCU, and she came home one day, and we were sitting on the porch. It was in March, and she said, "I can't do this anymore." And I thought that was one of the hardest things I've heard her say, and to say, "I need to take a break. I'm losing myself now," because I could see how it was making her ill. And I said, "What do you need me to do?" Which was the best thing. That was like a good husband time, because I can think of a million times where I screwed up and said the wrong thing. That was like, I was like on point. I had the coffee, so I said,
Holy Spirit.
Holy Spirit, God, totally Jesus. Honey, what can I do for you? It was like, that was the one moment where I got it right. And she would agree with that. But she said, "I need to take a step back completely." And it was the bravest thing I've seen somebody do, because there was a sense of, there's an identity, but there was also a sense of, this is gonna hurt me. So she took a step back and did something else for about 5 years, and then eventually went back, not to the ER, but is at the hospital right now, working. I just thought that was just really, really, really brave. And so I think sometimes in the workplace, we have that opportunity to help people realize that our identity in America often comes from what we do. It's not who we are. But I think that we can do both. I love doing what I do. I like my identity as a social worker. But I really, over time, have learned to value my identity as a husband and as a father, and as trying to be a faithful disciple of Christ. Yeah. That's been and it's been really fulfilling. Yeah. It's been really, that's another unintended destination. Yeah. Without a doubt.
Is that an area that you actually see come to play in people who are experiencing mental health crises or suicidal ideation? Is there a sense of, well, my significance is at work, and when I lose that?
Yeah, quite a bit. It was interesting. I was talking with this guy on Monday this week. His first time I'd seen him, he was referred to me by a psychiatrist friend of mine whom I really respect. And so I'm talking to this guy, and he's about 40 years old, really nice guy. And I like doing the assessment part. I like to meet. I'm an introvert, but I like to meet new people. It's weird. And we're talking, and I'm listening to this guy, and this guy has spent his entire adult life building community in his work. I mean, he's like really good at it. I know, because he helps set up retirement communities. And my dad and stepmother are in a retirement community in the same company. And so I know the value they place on it. But I said, "So what's missing?" He goes, "I don't have community. My identity's at work." And I said, "So we have to look at a fundamental shift here, a fundamental shift. And how do we go from that to that?" So I have no idea. I said, "But that's where it's at. That's where it's at." And so that's the process of rebuilding it. What does it mean to be a husband? What is it? And he's got a strong marriage. He's like a really good dad, got young kids. What does that mean to be community? Because all of his is coming from work, and he's realizing now at 40, I'm feeling kind of hollow. And I'm also, I'm drinking a lot. And so part of it was to be able to say, name it. Talk to your wife about how much you're drinking. And you know what? No more alcohol in your house. He goes, "Really?" I said, "Let's try it." Yeah. Let's try it. And so, I think a lot of that is really helping people define that. Because I struggle with that. I mean, I struggle with that. But at the end of the day, I realize it's not that, and it's not that in. Yeah. Not that in. It's not in. My kids don't care if they're really proud of me when I published my I only have 2 books. My last book I really liked. The first one I didn't, because the editors kind of edited the heck out of it. But my boys were really proud of me, and that was cool. But I was more proud that they were just there with me. You know what I'm saying? It's just my oldest son's a runner. He's just signed to run on at Roanoke College, and I'm so proud of him. And they're all great kids, but that's what counts.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're texting me right now saying, "Hey, we're going to watch Thursday Night Football," and I'm like, "Oh, you are?"
It's going to be a good game.
I guess so.
Cowboys Seahawks.
Yeah, well, no. All right, move on.
No, that's fair.
Next question.
I think that's helpful. I have no idea how much time we have, Carter. So if you're going to wave at me and give me a time limit, please do.
Yeah.
We have like 98 more questions.
Are you serious?
Last one. Okay.
Sorry.
No. This has been wonderful. It's been helpful. And I'll tell you, even hearing you talk about that, there was a period where I spent exactly 1 month unemployed. And it was the only time in my adult life I didn't have a job.
Were you depressed?
And I think what saved me from depression was it was the only month that I spent at home every day with my daughter. And so that was the first time I saw myself as something more than I was a pastor. So something more than I'm a pastor. Because I started to realize my sweet little girl, who was 2 at the time, I was like, she doesn't know that. She just sees me that. She just wakes up every day and says, Dad's here. Dad's here every day, all day.
And how many kids have been orphaned? How many kids are ministry orphans?
Yeah.
Their parents, often dads. The church comes first, the family comes second.
Yeah.
You did say something there I just want to mention. A lot of people say, what causes mental illness? And that's a really good question that's not been asked. There's a lot of part of what happens, and if you want to learn more, this is a plug for tomorrow where I talk more about it at Needle's Eye at 12 o'clock. But most of in the West, most views on mental illness is that it's caused by an imbalance of neurotransmitters. That's true in about 1 out of 4 situations. And that's why people with major depressive disorder, for example, quite often things are going great, but I feel like crap. Mm-hmm. Okay, that is often physiological, something that's really out of your control. Other times it's situational. I've had people that have come to me and I've sat there and listened to them and I've kind of gone, I'm listening to your story and it seems like you really hate your job. And like, oh my gosh, I hate it. So what about getting a new job? Oh, I can't do that. Why not? Because I'd have to give up this, this, and this. I understand, but you're saying everything else is going great, but your job, your boss is abusive to you. Or these things like that. I mean, do you see it? There's a situational thing right there. And situational doesn't mean it's not as serious.
Yeah.
But it means there's not a medicine for it. And what the medical society says is there's got to be a drug for it. No, there's not. For other folks, it's something else. It could be substance use disorder that's often masked. I mean, it's weird. I meet so many people who, when I'm talking with them, like, I have bipolar disorder, and I kind of go through the criteria. Very few people have bipolar disorder. It is exceptionally rare. It is akin to a seizure disorder, actually. Very, very rare. In fact, most people in my field have never seen a patient with bipolar disorder unless they've worked in the ER. It's very, very, very rare. And it's better seen as trauma. So trauma, really bad things that happen, and even if it doesn't meet the criteria of post-traumatic stress disorder, but really bad things that happen to you, whether you're a young person and or an older person, that feeds that. Meds won't help that. And then there's a spiritual aspect. My worldview is, the world is a horrible place. How's that working out for you? Mm-hmm. I had and I'll talk more about this tomorrow, but I had a guy I talked with a couple of months ago, and I was just struggling with him because it was almost like he was wedded to being depressed. And I said, what's your worldview? And he said, I'm an absurdist. I said, what the heck does that mean? And he said, I believe we're just evolved monkeys. And I said, okay. I said, how's that working out for you? He said, what do you mean? I said, maybe the issue is change the worldview. And he's like, and I love what he said. He looked at me and he goes, well, that would take a lot of work. And I said, yes, it would. He hasn't come back. Mm. And again, I wasn't, and again, it's not in my role to evangelize as a provider. It's actually very much frowned upon. It's not what I do. But I also don't hide the fact what I believe. If somebody asks me, I'm going to tell them. But and I wasn't saying, hey, get your tail to church. probably should have, because it would have couldn't have hurt. But the fact is that, change your worldview. What if you not even change it, but what if you examined the fact that your absurdist worldview is making you miserable? So maybe we could work on changing that. But he looked at me and he said, but that sounds so hard. And I said, most things that are worth changing are not easy.
Yeah.
I've had people come to therapy and so we just kind of shoot the bull, and I'm like, no, this isn't going to be a fun time with coffee. I have friends I get coffee with. This is going to be, I'm going to push you hard as we get to know each other. And if I need to, I'm going to kick your ass. And it's not because I don't care about you. It's because I want to see you succeed. I want to see you become the person you want to be. And I've been very lucky in my career to walk alongside people who've made those difficult journeys and to just be a part of it and to see. Sometimes God's work is evident. Other times it's not. But, just to kind of see that, it's really kind of cool.
Yeah.
But again, there's a lot of causes to it.
Yeah.
More than anything else.
Absolute last question.
Okay.
And let's keep it as short as possible.
Well, that will not be easy.
Carter's giving me the principal nod.
Well, good. I'm glad she's giving it to you. I'm not looking over there.
So last question, because you obviously are an experienced and an exceptional professional in this field. This
Experienced,
is
but I don't know about exceptional. But okay.
I'm saying exceptional.
Okay.
I'll give you that moniker.
I appreciate it.
Most of us here aren't. Right, most of us are just kind of going about our day, and we're just doing finances, or we're teaching karate, or we're whatever. Cool. But we don't have that training. What is, in your opinion, the thing that every single one of us can do when we run into a coworker or a family member? What is the safe, effective thing that every single one of us could actually say, "Here's something I can do for my friend who's in a crisis"?
Be nice and be willing to listen. I mean, it sounds easy.
Yeah.
Be nice and be willing to listen.
Yeah.
Be nice. Patrick Swayze said be nice in Roadhouse, classic movie. Be nice.
And if Swayze says it.
If Swayze says it, it must be gospel truth. No, but I'm serious. I mean, be kind. I mean, again, if you look, there's a really good book, came out a number of years ago, called The Eighth Habit by Stephen Covey. He wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that everybody bought in the 90s, but nobody read. But it's a shame because it's a great business book. And really what he talked about, the eighth habit in leadership, particularly in business, is really what it comes down to is be true to who you are. Be kind. Doesn't mean you can't make tough decisions. Be kind. And listen first. Seek, he talked about, seek to understand before being understood. And I thought that's just great. And so part of it is just to have that opportunity to see what you do as ministry more than anything else. Don't be like those churches that I referenced in my talk about one thing happens on Sunday, but the other 160 some odd hours of the week, it's something different. But that's why you're involved here, is you want to change that. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
Yeah,
Thank you. All right, Carter.
Those are really good questions, by the way. That was the best question, Zach.